Greetings and salutations, everyone. Samus here, and Hardcore server starts up in a couple of days. So, like usual, I want to run down my personal list for, I think, the top 8 most powerful builds for the Hardcore server. And I'll try to kind of touch on them. And I took and I made previews of the top 3, but that's for a little bit later here. So, in number 8, the Repeater Warforged Artie build. So you're going to hear an awful lot of good things about Artie and Warforged together. The fact that they can self-heal really nicely, the fact that they have some good MMR, PRR things going on, they have lots of hit points, and depending on how you build it, you can set the stats up where you have a really good constitution as well as a really good intelligence. And those two things together can make for a really high DPS ranged character, as well as a potentially high DPS melee character. Specifically, we're talking about the Repeater builds right now. So you're staying out of danger, you're self-healing, you're able to take care of traps. Like, it's just solid. The downside is you're playing a Warforged, which means other people trying to heal you, probably not going to be as great unless you're playing with other Warforged, which is pretty common for, like, set defined groups, right? People will decide, okay, we're going to play on the Hardcore server, we're all going to play Warforges. And that makes a very important, or a very potent team. So, if you are interested in such a thing, I would definitely recommend trying to find a good, solid team. But even if you're by yourself or just pugging, the ability to self-heal will really go a long ways, I think. And obviously being able to stay out of the range of battle is pretty good. Arties can use int to hit or damage through spells, as well as boost your enemy or your allies' DPS pretty nicely. I'm trying to think, is there anything else major that either hurts or helps Warforges a great deal? I don't think docents quite are as commonplace on the hotness scale is like armor, I guess, because you're only dropping so many docents opposed per suit of regular armor. So you may or may not be able to find one that you really like. And do they still get crafting levels, like bonus crafting stuff? They do. So you get a little bit of crafting stuff going in on it just for being an arty in general. And maybe that'll make a difference if you want to do a little bit of crafting over on the Hardcore. Number 7, I have 2 builds here, but they're both kind of the same. Inquisitive Favored Soul or Inquisitive Pale Master / Eldritch Knight. This is my Eldritch Knight symbol. So, again, one of the things that's really good about those kind of builds, or this style of builds, being far away because you're range, and then having good self-healing and immunities. So Favored Souls get a lot of hit points if they want them, especially if you go through a little bit of hoops. You can really get a lot of good oomph out of an Inquisitive Favored Soul. Same thing with Wizard, especially if you have at least a little bit of Pale Master in you, you can like get your aura ticking. Maybe your intelligence to hit and damage. Maybe you're running either Lich form or Wraith form. Either one of those are both very strong in the Pale Master category. Again, you get your self-healing, you get your immunities, you get your big pile of hit points, you get a bunch of reasonable damage, and you get your primary attack to be away from melee, which is pretty good. I personally tend to lean just a little bit more towards Wizard and Wizard Inquisitives over Favored Soul Inquisitives, but because I like the self-healing and I like Wizards. But there's a really good argument for low level doing stuff as a Favored Soul, because then you can spec low level for the Sunbolt until you're ready to like put enough points into Inquisitive to like really kick it up a notch. So a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, and most of the War Soul stuff works with Inquisitive pretty nicely. So that's That's why it's number 7. Number 6, a good Animal Domain Cleric. So, kind of like Inquisitive just a little bit ago, the Animal Domain Cleric lets you pick up a big pile of hit points. Also, you're able to, you'll use your turn undeads on animals, which can be extremely effective, especially at low levels. Being able to fire off that turn undead attempt when there's 3 dogs trying to trip you to death is pretty good. So you get lots of hit points. You have the ability to use your turn undead on animals. You still get your full spell selection, so you can heal and do some stuff. The other big option, of course, for a cleric would be a fire domain cleric, and that would give you access to Scorching Ray, Firewall, your ability to turn elementals, which is also really good. But I would say for most people, you're going to get a little bit more bang out of your buck for an animal domain, unless you're already comfortable playing a fire cleric. If you are playing a fire cleric, then you are a huge boon to your party, especially in just epic level quests. Or not epic, just elite level quests, not Reaper. Although you will have good ability to do stuff in Reaper with Soundburst DCs, with Scorching Ray being able to hit race, and so on and so forth. Ghost Touch things, Reaper, stuff like that. And there's not that much stuff that's immune to fire that you also can't take out with your light spells, because remember, you get to use the higher of your light or your fire spell power, so it lets you kind of focus in on Soundburst DC or evocation stuff, or both, because again, you have a little bit of wiggle room, especially if you're a human, which we'll kind of give a little special shout out to human in a minute. Number 5, I have Warlocks. I think Warlocks got a big boost with the last update, and I think they're going to be in a good spot for this hardcore. Personally, I'm going to tell you right now, I will be doing a little bit of Warlock stuff. I'm going to have 4 levels of Warlock on my build for Brilliance and the temporary hit points. That may not be for everybody, but I think Staunch is a pretty potent Warlock. I keep wanting to say Warforge. Warlock power. And that's pretty easy to get your hands on. And then you can kind of go from there. Cone is obviously huge, not only for killing big groups of monsters, but also for hitting breakables pretty easily, stuff like that. If you're not afraid to hold down the attack button and kill a whole bunch of monsters, then you're good. The biggest problems are going to be bosses, from my understanding. But hopefully you're not going to be trying to solo on everything, and you should be just fine. So Warlock's number 5. Number 4, this is another one that's more me than probably everybody. But I'm going to put the Pale Trapper in. I always put the Pale Trapper in my list somewhere, because it does lots of really good and useful things, like evasion, self-healing, a lot of natural immunities, the ability to take care of traps, and you could have a really good DCs if you want them. And then if you follow my video from a couple of seasons ago, if you kind of follow that build, you'll be able to have really good DPS using your necrotic SLAs. And the only quest that you really struggle with, in my opinion, is Giant Hold Tor. And that's because those giants in Giant Hold Tor are immune to negative energy damage from your Necroblast and stuff. But they PK and Finger of Death and stuff like that just fine. So, again, as long as you're not trying to do that alone in Blasty only mode, you should be okay. Pale Master Trapper is one of my favorite builds for the hardcore, and is usually what I use to achieve the 5,000 favor, the 10 plus Reaper points, and all that stuff. That's usually the build that I take. And my last Pale Master, I think, is in the top 15 for Season 3. And had I realized that I cared, I think we probably could have been in the top 10 pretty easily. Again, Pale Trappers, I really like. Now, number 3, and the first one that we have a sample of, is the RT Renegade Master Maker. Warforge RT Renegade Master Maker. So, This probably is not correct on stats or importance, but this is how I kind of mentally thought that I would want to build it if I was doing something and going to level 4. So I did take mithril armor, I think at level 4 or 3, somewhere in that ballpark, which gives me a window to have saved up a few action points to be able to make it where I have no spell fail inherently, which is nice in my opinion. And then obviously we're able to go up Renegade Master Maker right away, picking up a few extra hit points, picking up a cleave attack, picking up a mighty slam or a stun effect, and then also being able to grab a chemical shield right away, because we're in mithril, which is a medium body type, and that picks up magic missile immunity right away. So like, you get a lot of bang for your buck out of Renegade Master Maker if you happen to also be a Warforged. If you're not a Warforged, I think you lose a little bit with, not quite as good at self-healing and not quite as easy to reduce your spell failure right away. But it still could be quite strong, especially like on a human build or something where you can kind of do a little fussing and make that happen. Again, on this test build, I was able to start with a 20 Constitution and an 18 Intelligence, and kind of currently damn everything else. Warforges have a lot of good low-level immunities, and being able to get your Constitution up super high is great. Planning on int to hit and int to damage. Currently using int to hit on this build via the spells. But very early on, you could easily spend a couple of points in Harper Agent to get your Strategic Combat 1 for int to hit for 2 points. If you wanted to free up a couple of points. And then you could, at level 5, I believe, or 6, well, 5 or 6 as an arty, you can start taking the spell to do intelligence to damage, and then that leaves you some extra free points, so you could just go up to just know the angles. You don't have to go all the way up to Strategic Combat 2 unless you really want to, because the way the spells work on the arty, the first... I guess I don't have it here. I could have taken it, but I guess I didn't. The arties have a self-buff weapon enchantment that'll let you do intelligence to either hit or to damage, and that stacks with like your elemental weapons. So you can have both of those things at the same time. The other really interesting thing about a pure arty in particular is that you'll not only have your trapping skills taken care of, but you're also going to have access to resist elements and protection from elements at their full values. Meaning at level 12, if you're a pure arty, you'll be able to cast resist elements at 30 for 30, which is a pretty big game, all things considered. All right, let's take a look at number 2. These over here I all put together on the, I think, Thalanosaur maybe, or Arganesson, I don't remember. Number 2, you may have noticed, is a Paladin, a human Paladin. And in this case, I went ahead and I went with a strength-based human Paladin with a pretty reasonable amount of charisma. I don't know if that's completely the best way to build it. I think if you could figure out a way to go full charisma, it would be better. But if you're going to do two-handed fighting, you have to have a base of 15 strength to be able to take the two-handed fighting feat, and I think that's one of the major points that you want to do. You want to be that two-handed fighter, human Paladin. Again, this is level 4, and I have 100% strike through. Part of that comes from the fact that we are human, and in addition to picking up an extra strength, a little bit more healing amp, we also dump some points into great weapon amplitude, giving us an extra 20% strike through at level 4, which does sound like a lot, and maybe that is too much, but in my opinion, every attack being 2 hits is going to be really important for hardcore. Clearing those mobs, getting them cleared, and getting them out of the way. Also, you may notice that we have 3 extra lay on hands, I don't actually know how many lay on hands we actually have at the moment. I just took it, thinking I know that I'm going to want these extra lay on hands. So let's just slam it down there. 4 lay on hands. And for us, those 4 lay on hands are currently 33 hit points, which is not too bad, all things considered, right? You get a pretty reasonable amount of hit points, in my opinion, and you'll have the ability to wear some pretty good armor. Whether or not you make some other tweaks for yourself, depending on your experience. My Paladin that I did most recently, I just followed Tobrel's build that you can find on the forums if you just look for Tobrel. I followed his build pretty much exactly, with a few tweaks. There's also a video on that on my YouTube channel. So if you're interested in how I did a Paladin with all the bells and whistles, you might watch that video. But for I think the hardcore server, to get things started, I think this is where you want to be. The other nice perk of being a human Paladin is you also get to take the Dragon Mark of Passage, which means, yes, you're going to have the ability to expeditious retreat yourself at level 1, which is pretty good. But then for just a little bit more points, right? Just like instead of taking improved recovery, we could have taken this focus, and we could easily be able to have Dimensional Door. Dimensional Door is a lifesaver on the hardcore server, right? It's pretty great. And then the same thing if you wanted to go just a little bit further up that tree, you could also take Teleport, which being able to slam a GTFO button in the event of an emergency and say go to the marketplace or go to some other teleport location that you've drugged to your bar that sits there all the time is extremely powerful as a getaway thing. So that's kind of part of that human discussion that we were having before, that I mentioned we'd have before, is that humans bring a lot to the party, a lot more than they may seem, compared to like some of the other races, in particular the ASMR. That's what I was trying to think of. The ASMR with their natural lay on hands, you might think, oh, ASMR, but fast travel, being able to run around, stuff like that. A lot of extra strike through. There's a lot of value in being a human. Not just a human paladin, but for anything that wants to like have some fast movement, ability to de-door away to safety, and some extra strike through, right? So that brings an awful lot to the party. And last but not least, you've heard me say this before, and I'm not going to stutter too much around it. A half-elf bard's focusing on Spellsinger continues to be really good. Bard's got a huge buff with the last update. A lot of their spells got increased. Spellsinger was really good for the hardcore before. I've used, for hardcore season 1, my Bard is what actually got me the 5,000 K favor in the last week. I will say from personal experience, be careful of disintegrates. Bards do not have the world's greatest saves, but with a little bit of effort, a little bit of effort and a little bit of being aware of the situation, you can avoid that. This build happens to be all con and all charisma, which may or may not be correct for the hardcore. I don't know. I just slammed it together for purposes of having one here. This one's going to level 7 instead of level 4 like the rest. And this is kind of how I put it together. With bards, you have to do some small hoop jumping, in my opinion, to get to Fate Arc Illusionist. But you can do that, and they're things that you want to do anyway. So, in this case, I went up the Magical Studies tree to pick up Magical Training, and then I was able to go up the Fate Arc Illusionist tree to grab Color Spray, Magic Missile Immunity. I went ahead and I took Illusionary Weaponry. It's good to have sometimes. I don't know, maybe. It gives you some sort of weapon for not a lot of effort. Again, I think that these kind of abilities are going to be really good this go around. Flame Blades, Illusionary Weaponry, stuff like that. Things that are going to create a weapon for you that doesn't break, hits a lot of, bypasses a lot of DR, stuff like that. I think is going to have a lot of value this hardcore server. And the important thing about this particular build, in my opinion, is the fact that we went half-elf. And the reason we went half-elf specifically is because of... Why is it not showing because of the half-elf Warlock Dilettante. So the Warlock Dilettante works really weird, right? You toggle it on and you get an extra D4 fire damage with attacks and spells. But the spells increase, right? So I'm just going to slam a couple things over here really quickly just to kind of demonstrate. Did we... Yeah, we picked up Reverberate. And just for whatever purposes, I'm just going to jump into... into the Explorer Zone over here. So always on. Doesn't matter. These are all SLAs. Always on, always on, always on. Always maximize. Always empower. Okay. So we're just going to jump into this Explorer Zone just to kind of demonstrate. Obviously, we're level 7. We're way over where we should be. But we also have whatever miscellaneous gear just happened to be given to us from the boat captain. So, like, look at that. Look at that. For 4 spell points, we just did 111 points of damage. And we didn't even do the fire damage that goes along with the ride. There it is. So again, if in doubt, look at that. Look at that. That was 4 mana. If in doubt, just play a Spellslinger Bard. Just play a half-elf Spellslinger Bard. Lots of charisma. As much constitution as you feel comfortable with. If you really want to push it, and you easily can, you can, see, you even got to see that fire damage for the color spray there. If you want to push it just a little bit, you can put in some rogue levels. 1 to 2 rogue levels gives you traps. Bards have lots of skill points naturally. So a little bit of intelligence, you can go a long way. So as you see, we're currently getting about 30 extra points of damage. And I believe that's going to scale. I believe with spells, that's a D4. I don't know if it's a level or every couple levels. It doesn't quite say. But it really does add up. It really does. Oh, look at there. We took 3 whole points of damage. So anyway, that was the list. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys... Take some time, think about it, get some real success this go around on the hardcore server. I know I'm going to enjoy it. As always, you can watch me live, twitch.tv/SamusGarobo, of course over here on youtube.com/SamusGarobo as well. Hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope this helps you figure out what builds you want to play for the hardcore. There's lots of builds. These are just the ones that I think are the top 8 most beneficial ones for what I've seen, the way I've seen people play, and my experience for Hardcore 1 through 3. I hope you guys enjoy. Peace, much love, and we'll see you guys soon. Toodles.